trying to get an infant heading into the resource library, so everything will be found there. But thank you guys for joining us today. We're going to get started with infant meals. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. Just a little bit of tidbit. So we have a training manual, and that is located also in the resource library. Your consultant, the person who comes out and works with you, is located there. So if you ever have any more questions, contact them. They can come out and look at how you're doing things. They can look at your records before a review. If it's a review, we have to make it a review. But if you're like, hey, I just want you to look at our process, what do you think of this? They can give you hints, ideas, and it's not counted against you. It's just, we call it technical assistance. Again, if you have any other questions, you can call our office at the State Department. Right now, we are teleworking. Some are, we kind of rotate in. Every day is kind of different. And plus with the holidays, we were all back, I think, since September, and then they had us back to teleworking. I don't know how long it's going to last. I know, of course, until the new year, but I'm not sure if it's going to go through February. You know, we just don't know. So you call. If you sometimes may not get a hold of somebody, you can leave a voicemail. We are answering our voicemail. Just give us time, because they are checking them from home if they are always working from home. But the best way, honestly, is you can email at the cacfp@sde.ok. It's everybody that is in our CACFP division in the office. They have access to this email, and they're all looking at it. So you may have one person's email address, but if you just want a question answered, you can email here, and about 4 to 5 people have access to this address, and they'll be able to get back with you. So I was talking about the resource library. If you're not aware of what that is, what you'll do is you go to this website right here. This is the website where you can go, and this is where the application and agreement is located. We have information about the USDA website. We have rates, we have scale, we call it the food buying guide if you're not familiar with that. This training calendar of how you signed up for this training is also located here, and access to claims. You may not have a login, and that's okay. If you don't have a login, you can still go to what we call the resource library. And that's where we keep, again, the slides, we're keeping the handouts, the training manuals in there. We have interactive forms. So really, if you need anything to help you do your job, it should be located in the resource library. You do not need access to, you don't have to log in to get access to the resource library. Now, if you do want more information regarding trainings, you do have to log in for the training calendar to pop up. And I'm just, so you guys are aware, we put a slide up at the very beginning. I kind of changed it as some of you were coming on. But just a reminder, we don't send out certificates for this training. So what we do is when you do log in, and then you register for this class, and please, if you have multiple people listening with you on the same computer or the same system, that is fine. Just put their name in the chat. But everybody who listened needs to register. And then what happens is after the training, instead of sending you a certificate, once you give us a few days, it's Monday right now, so it should be probably by the end of the week. But what we do is we take the information from Zoom, and we look at who registered, and then we approve the training, that you did everything you needed for this training. And it will show up when you go to either the application side, or if you go into the business maintenance and scroll all the way down, it will show that you attended this training. Right now, it just may state that it may not state somebody's name, but we are trying to, again, we're crippling along with what we're trying to do. We want it to say eventually your name, and even our wish list, which I bet won't happen anytime soon, is we would really like it to when it would show your name and what training you attended. And then when you go and click on it, it would print you out a certificate. But that's our wish list. But instead of sending out certificates, because they're just blank, you can go there to show that you went to training. And if someone has a question, whether it was specifically you, they can call here, because it shows in our backside that the name of the person who attended. And this is what it looks like when you go to that website. As you can see, it's kind of cut off here, but if you look in the kind of the mustard or the yellow, whatever kind of color it might be on your screen in the left-hand corner, the second to the bottom says the resource library, and that's where you go to find all the information that we'll be talking about today. So if you do have more questions, or if you do want to see the resources, you can go there to find the information that you need. This is kind of what it will look like when you get in there. It has changed a little bit. We did this year, I'm talking like a couple months ago, we added more headings to make it easier to find information. So it used to say center forms was the very first thing. Now it'll say like adults at risk. We tried to make it much easier to locate information that you're wanting. Okay, so let's get started with infant meals. So if you have infants at your center and the center is participating in CACFP, it is required that the center offer meals to their infants. When you're new, I would be the first one to tell you as well, but when you're new, it's hard enough that you're trying to learn the CACFP meal pattern for children, let alone also tacking on infants. So a lot of times people would just do the infant meal waiver form and have the parents or guardian bring the food for the kids, and you wouldn't worry about them because you're just trying to learn how to do children before you add infants. Everybody thinks infants are the easiest, and I feel infants are the hardest because of there's two reasons why, and we'll kind of talk about it here when we go through, but they can be a little bit difficult claiming wise with the program. So I understand that if you do want to learn the program first, if you are new before you add the infants, but the USDA does want you to offer it to your parents that they can participate in this program. We do have a one-page infant meal waiver form. It's the easiest form that we have. You list the child's name, the birth date, and this parent signs it. And it basically says that the parent's going to bring everything, or they don't want to follow the meal patterns that is set forth by USDA. So their child is just not going to participate in the program. And that may be a really good option for you too. I've had some centers where like the parent wants you to purchase everything to be organic, or it's just some of the things that they want. It's just not maybe cost effective for you. And it's just the demands are just a lot higher, or it's foods that don't meet meal pattern requirements per USDA. So if that's the case, then you can do the infant meal waiver. The infant meal waiver basically just states that they're not going to follow the USDA guidelines. And if that's the case, you cannot claim the meal if they are on the infant meal waiver form. Infants, when we talk about infants, we're talking from birth to up to 12 months. So once they turn 1, then they'll go on to the children's side. But we're going to be talking about from birth up to that 11-month and last day of the year. And then infants are a little bit different than children because they are feed on demand. In the application and agreement, you are to list, or it is listed in there, the times of when you're going to serve a meal, and you can only serve meals in that time frame. But infants are different. We understand that they don't eat the same times as children do. They eat when they're hungry. So they do not have to follow those guidelines of eating in the same time as other kids do. Theirs is just still mostly done based on like what components you're giving them. So they may have their breakfast at 7, or they may have their breakfast at 10, but it may not follow the guidelines of the application that says the other children are having breakfast, say from 7 to 8. So they are feed on demand. So we have 2 meal groups for infants, and the handouts that we sent you is the meal patterns. It's the actual physical meal patterns that you can look at whenever you are trying to feed them. But the 2 age groups that we have are birth through 5 months, and we have 6 months through 11 months. Both age groups do require iron fortified formula, breast milk, or a combination of both. Now, as you can see on this slide, there's a blue box if you haven't ever attended one of these trainings before, but in the box it says P196. What that's referring to is in the training manual. This information that we're starting to talk about will be on page 196. So if you ever want to go back and look at some of this information, or where we're getting this information from, you can go into our training manual, which again is also located in the resource library. We did mail one out each year to each center. You may not know where it's at, or you may not have access, but you can go and find it in the resource library. Just a reminder that milk served to an infant is not reimbursable. So if, say, a parent wants them at 11 months to start drinking milk, either you cannot claim the milk or you must have a doctor's note. Milk is not permissible to anybody under the age of 1 year of age without a medical statement. So these are just some updates that occurred when they changed the meal patterns in 2017. One is that infants can be breastfed on site and the meal can be reimbursed. So if a parent does want to come to the center and breastfeed their child, they can do so and the meal can be reimbursed. Vegetables and or fruits must be served at snack once the child is eating those types of food items. Juice, cheese food, or any cheese spreads are no longer creditable, which honestly, cheese food you can't really find. You can actually now do yogurt, and whole eggs are creditable as a meat alternate. Yogurt used to not be. You still cannot do soy yogurt. You could only do milk yogurt, or before it couldn't be the whole egg. It was just the egg yolk, I believe. And then you can actually serve ready to eat cereals, breads, crackers, and they can only be served at snack. So a ready to eat cereal, in case you don't know, is something like Cheerios. It cannot be served for any other meal but for snack. All right. So USDA is big about promoting breastfeeding. So again, a mother can come on site and breastfeed her infant. A parent or guardian can also supply expressed milk, which is breast milk that is expelled from the breast, and they usually give it to you in it's already maybe in the bottle, but you can, again, claim the meal. It used to be, before the new meal patterns came out, that you could only serve express milk and claim the meal, but USDA has changed their stance on this, which I'm thankful for, and I was actually kind of surprised they didn't promote it before, but a mother can come on site and breastfeed. So breastfed infants may not consume the entire serving. So if they offer less than the minimum serving size of breast milk, so in these situations, an infants may be offered less than the minimum serving size of breast milk, and additional breast milk must be offered at a later time if the infant will consume more. So if the serving size is, say, 4 to 6 ounces and the child is only taking 3 ounces, at that point, you do need to offer them at least that 1 ounce within a time frame. And that is found on page 210. It's question number 7 is where you can find information more about serving express breast milk. So documenting, how do you document when a parent comes to breastfeed? Well, you're not going to know the amount. And USDA, they're not going to be pushing any amounts like that. So if a parent comes to breastfeed, all you need to do is on the infant meals to serve form is you can just put, say, breastfed on site or mother on site. You can do anything like that. Again, you're not going to list an amount because you're not going to know an amount. And will be on page 205 and 267 is the example of the infant form. So iron fortified infant formula. So if you are going to have, it's best to supplement for breast milk. Infants may not drink the entire serving of formula, but again, it's reimbursable as long as the minimum serving size is offered. So again, it's the same thing. If a child needs 4 to 6 ounces and they only drink 3, if you offered them 4 ounces, you can claim the meal. You need to serve any leftovers properly accordance to the health department. So, and with DHS. So if I remember correctly, DHS states that you can have the bottle for 1 hour. Now, just something to keep in mind, and we'll talk more about it when we get to the 6-month-old and older, is they does have to be offered. But if you know the child is not going to drink the 4 ounces, they're going to drink, say, 3 ounces, then you probably don't want to offer them because you don't want to waste formula, especially if the parent is supplying it. But again, they have to be offered the minimum serving size in order to claim the meal. It's just like with other children, the minimum serving sizes have to be offered. They don't have to consume it to claim it, but you do have to offer the minimum serving size is required. It is required if a center is, again, participating in the CACFP program, that you must offer a minimum of 1 type of iron fortified infant formula. The center gets to choose which formula that they would like to offer, but you do have to make the parents aware that, yes, here we have, say, Good Start iron fortified formula. The parents can choose to use yours or they can bring their own. But if you are on the program, you do have to have a can or something on site or something offered to the parents just in case, which I'm actually surprised. I thought this was a DHS requirement. Actually, two of us thought it was a DHS requirement when this all came out. We couldn't find it in there. Because I know with like my nieces, they've shown up a couple times and the bottle, so a parent forgets to put the bottles, and it happens periodically. So I was just kind of surprised DHS doesn't require that, just in the fact that if someone you happen to run out that day, things happen, and a bottle spills, or it's just the parent accidentally forgot him and they have to rush him back to you, but it takes a little bit of time to go to the house and get the bottles. So it is required, again, that you offer one type of iron fortified formula. We don't have this problem in Oklahoma, but it must be regulated by the FDA. So you cannot purchase any formula outside of the United States. Again, Oklahoma, we're not close to a border, so we're not buying it from Mexico or from Canada, but the formula that you offer must, again, be FDA regulated. So let's talk about birth through 5 months. That's our first group that we're going to talk about. So breast milk or infant formula is the only meal requirement, that a component that is actually required. So the serving sizes are 4 to 6 fluid ounces of express breast milk or infant formula. So from birth to 5 months, the only thing that is required is breast milk or formula. And the serving size is 4 to 6 ounces. So when are you going to start maybe introducing solid foods? So I don't think it's going to be you that's making the decision. It's going to be the parent that starts making the decision. But these are some signs to look out for. So once an infant shows signs of developmental readiness, solid foods can be offered. When you can gradually introduce solid foods, it doesn't have to be just baby food. You can use regular food. You can puree, but whatever you do, it has to be prepared in the right texture and consistency for that age group. And then observe infants closely for any reactions after feeding any new food. So we'll talk about this again, but I can't kind of harp enough is you do not, so there's two folds here. When we talk about the record keeping aspect, I would get not perturbed, but when they would just write, someone would say maybe a child starts eating fruit, and so they would just put 2 tablespoons fruit. Well, you can't, on the production records, on the menu and serve forms, we need to know exactly what you fed that child, not fruit. What fruit did you serve them? Not just that, but my thought is also, if my child did have a reaction, I would be calling you and asking you what you fed my child that day. So if you're not writing it down correctly, then if you're just writing down fruit, how do you know what you fed my child to give me as a parent the information that I'm needing? Also, I know a lot of times there's some places that they have a record that they're keeping separately from ours that does give a lot of detail, maybe the time, how much they ate, very detailed information. You do not have to keep 2 sets of records. If your one form that you're keeping for parents that talks about how much you're giving the child, when you fed the child, how much you gave the child, that's the only form you really have to keep. We provide forms, but as long as the information we have is more the same or more, you can definitely, you do not have to keep 2 sets of records. So if your paperwork does indeed give us all the information we need, do not feel you have to keep 2 sets of records. What happens if you have an infant eating before 6 months? If an infant is developmentally ready to accept solid food before the 6 months, the center or daycare home can serve that solid food and claim the meal for reimbursement. So once an infant is developmentally ready for solids, the center or daycare home must indicate on the menu what foods are being served. And it does happen. My niece was one of them. I'll talk some stories about, I have 2 nieces, they're 3 and 5 now. They're 2 years, they're sisters, they're 2 years apart, same pediatrician, and they did completely different things with them. So she was starting at 4 months, but once a child starts eating, then you do need to start serving that meal, and please be documenting that on the forms. So now we're going to talk from 6 to 12 months or up to 1 year of age. This is what can kind of get some people in a little bit of trouble. Not trouble, but this is one thing that I'll just explain it. So a minimum of 6 to 8 fluid ounces is required to be offered. And then foods from all food components may be served when they are developmentally ready. So the issue that I see here is, and they did not change the serving size of formula or breast milk for the 6 through 1 year olds. It's always been 6 to 8 ounces. And I was in the field for 10 years. And the biggest thing that I saw was once you have infants who hit around the 10, 11 month age group, when they're eating more table food or they're eating more solid foods, they don't tend to drink as much formula. So if they're starting to eat more table food, so they're only taking 4 ounces of formula and not the 6 to 8, you have one of two choices. You either cannot claim the meal because they're not being offered the 4 to 6, 8. They're only being offered the 4 ounces. You can do the infant meal waiver form for them for however long until they turn up to age 1. Or you can make a bottle of 6 to 8 ounces, knowing that the child is only going to take, say, 4 ounces. I just want to caution you with that, though, because if I was a parent and I was supplying a formula and I know that my child only drinks 4 fluid ounces of formula at that point, and you're making a 6 ounce bottle 3 times a day, you're essentially wasting a bottle. So I would definitely talk to the parent if they're only taking 4 ounces and give them the 2 choices of like, hey, I need to give them 6 ounces in order for us, because the benefit is going to the daycare center. The benefit's not being, I understand it keeps the tuition low because this helps pay for the meals. But if the parent is supplying the formula, I'd really talk to them and be like, hey, your child's only having 4 ounces. We're required to do 6. Do you want us to offer them 6? Or do they just want to fill out the infant meal pattern, the infant meal waiver form? And you're just not going to claim the meal until that child is at age 1. Because I would really not like you wasting a bottle a day just so you can claim a meal. Also, what is required once it's 6 through 12 months? So these are the components that for breakfast, lunch, and snack. It's breast milk or iron fortified formula, infant cereal, meat alternates, or a combination of both, vegetable or fruit, or a combination of both, and grains. So those are the components that can be offered 6 through 12. And again, if they are eating or if they're starting to do things before the 6 months, you can start feeding them, and make sure you put it on the menu of serve forms. Like I said, my niece started at 4 months of age. She started doing fruit. So the infant meal pattern. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So it says the food components for the 6 months to 12 months, the serving size is 0 to 2 ounces and 0 to 4 tablespoons. Well, what does that mean? So what that means is USDA recognizes that all infants are not ready for solid foods at 6 months. But by 7 or 8 months, infants should be consuming solid foods from all components. They should. That doesn't mean they are, but they should be. The reason for the 0 to 2 and the 0 to 4 tablespoons is because we understand that infants, they may try one thing 1 week and then the next week they're not. They're letting the pediatrician and the parents be more open to what they want to feed their child, because before it was like you have to feed them this much infant cereal, this much fruit, and then like it was very dictated of what you have to serve in the serving sizes. The reason I'm going to talk about my nieces is because the 5-year-old and the 3-year-old. So most pediatricians, like, they start with infant cereal first, and then they'll add in fruit and stuff like that. When the same pediatrician to the sister 2 years before or 2 years later, to the 3-year-old, they did it different. They didn't start with infant cereal. They started with fruit. So a lot of pediatricians are doing things different. Maybe they want to start with a meat, or maybe they want to start with a vegetable. So that's why it says 0 to 2 tablespoons, because it is giving them more of a variety of what the parent or the pediatrician wants to start feeding the child. And again, we understand that they may not 1 week or 1 month, they may try and eat one thing. And then another month, they may try to be eating something else. But this is on page 214, the question and answers on number 6. So if I was coming out to do a review and I noticed that there's an 8-month-old infant not being served solid food, we are just supposed to ask to see if the infants are typically developmentally ready to consume solid foods by then. So we'll talk to you about that to see if they maybe are. Because once they are eating, you do need to start listing it down again, what they are eating. And not just that, but I'm not even thinking really for our program. I think mostly if I was a parent and my child was going to you, I want to know what my child had at your center that day. What if they have a reaction to something? Or maybe I'm just curious, what did you feed my child? So once they do start eating foods, you do need to start writing it down no matter the age. And again, we understand there may be some inconsistencies because they may be eating one thing 1 week and then you may back off and then maybe try something else. But at around 8 months of age, it is very typical that that infants will start be eating all of the groups, all the components. It's not for everybody. We've had people contact us and say we have a parent that doesn't want their child to have any solid foods up until 1 year of age, and that's okay. And we'll kind of talk about what you'll do in those types of instances, and even just suggestions that I will give to you once you have instance in talking with that parent. So the deal with the infant meal patterns is it recognizes eating habits may change. So again, some infants may eat a certain food 1 week or day, but not the next. But meals and snacks consistent with eating habits, we won't disallow it if we understand, especially when they're first learning to eat, that it may be switched up quite a bit. That's just common. It's very typical for infants, especially when they're starting to eat solids. So this is the biggest thing that I can recommend. And I did have someone I was going to reach out to. They do this at their center, and I was going to get a copy of the form. My goal is to create this form, and I'm going to write myself a note because it's going to get a little bit quiet soon with with Christmas coming up. But I'm going to make myself a note to try to do an infant parent form. I highly, highly suggest that once a child starts eating, that I would do something, have some communication in writing with the parent outlining which solid foods to serve. I think it helps, it saves you, it helps the parent, because I don't think really you're going to start just feeding a child whatever you want to feed them. You're going to go based on what the parent is wanting you to feed them. So if you can, I would get a statement like if a parent is like, okay, today we're doing fruits, we're doing peaches and plums, we're doing baby food, or maybe they're like, we want you to do the homemade food or whatever it might be. But I would definitely get it in writing. I would follow, of course, the preference of the parents, and a lot of times they're going to get it from their pediatrician. And I think it saves you and helps you of what to feed the child. And I just think it there sometimes can be backlash of like, I didn't give you, you guys are used to dealing with parents, but I never gave you permission to feed my child that. Well, if you have it in writing, it just kind of, I think, protects you about, I'm just doing what you're asking us to do. I know there's some hard parents out there. So this is for all ages, but it's always been really known for the infant side, but a parent or a guardian may provide one creditable food component. So a lot of times the parent does offer the breast milk or the formula. It has to be creditable. So for instance, if we were talking about, it has to be, the center has to provide a USDA or an FDA approved infant formula, it cannot be purchased outside the United States. So maybe you have someone that buys their formula from Mexico and they want you to feed that to their child. Well, it does not meet meal pattern requirements. So you can feed that to their child, but you cannot claim the meal. So even if a parent, if a parent does provide one component, it still has, that one component has to meet USDA guidelines in order to be claimed. So I hope that makes sense. The child care provider must provide all remaining components. And it can be anything. I've had some people are like, no, we'll provide the infant formula and the parent provide the food. And or like one component. So I'm talking like fruit. You have to provide the vegetable, the meat, everything else. But again, that component must be creditable per USDA, the food program. If it's not, you can't claim the meal. That's why a lot of times it's easier just to ask the parent to bring the breast milk or the formula. Not just that, but every child tends to be on a different formula. So once we get into this, when they do start to eating, we talked about the minimum serving size is 0 to 2 tablespoons. It is required to serve fruit and vegetable at snack once the child is eating that component. It can be served in a vegetable, fruit, or a combination, and commercial baby food containing multiple fruits or multiple vegetables is creditable. So it can be like, what is it, the plums, bananas, apples all together, or you may have mixed veggies, maybe mixed veggies and apples. And we just got some new information from USDA in October that I'll be talking about as well. So juice. Juice is no longer creditable, and I think I have this slide on here twice. Juice is no longer creditable towards reimbursable meal for an infant. I understand some parents do that maybe when they're about 10, 11 months, maybe because of constipation issues. You cannot claim it. You would have to have a doctor's note in order to serve juice to an infant. So as long as you have a doctor's note stating that you can serve that, then you can go ahead and do it. But if you do not have a doctor's note, again, no juice is allowed for any infant under the age of 1. So here are some meat alternates. You can do the jarred meat with gravy. So sometimes if you buy the jarred baby food, it says like ham with gravy or beef with gravy. Those are creditable. You can do yogurt. You just cannot do soy. You can do cheese, whole eggs, nut seeds, and nut seed butter are not creditable for infants. So just to make sure you are aware of that. But the top 4 are items that you can serve. There's another long list. You can go to page 206 to 207, but there's also another guidance book that I'm going to refer to here in just a moment. So I know you may not be buying the yogurt, but there is a requirement for the center in general that you cannot have any more than 23 grams of total sugars per 6 ounce. We do have a chart in our training manual that goes over this. Again, you may not be purchasing it. The cook might, and we do go over that in our meal patterns training, but I do want to, just so you're aware, or if maybe it's something the parent brings, if a parent brings it, it still has to match our requirements. So how do you know if it does meet? So what you'll do is you'll look at the nutrition facts label, and this is a copy of one right here. So this serving size is a 6 ounce container, and this has 19 grams of sugar. So we've had the question before, what if it says sugar and then it has also sugar added to? You have to do total sugar. So if there's 2 sugars listed, you have to add them both together, but this just has 1. So this 1 6 ounce container of yogurt has 19 grams of sugar. So what we'll do is we'll go to our chart. We have this chart. It's located on page 132 of the training manual, and we'll go down to the 6 ounces. So you see the 6 ounce yogurt, you'll scroll on the way over, and it says the sugar limits are from 0 to 23 grams. So because the yogurt that we selected only has 19 grams of sugar, this does meet requirements, and that yogurt can be served. Now, if your parent or if your yogurt that you're serving your infants are different than the rest of the center, talk to the cook or talk to the director, whoever is, because I'm assuming I'm talking to a lot of teachers or maybe even directors, so you can talk to your teachers. But that's why we kind of separated this out for the infants, is in case you want your teachers to have this training. We do need copies of the labels. We do have to have copies, the front of what it was, and then also the nutrition facts label, because we have to make sure that these met requirements. If you don't keep your labels, or if you don't keep the yogurt container and clean it out, then we don't know if you met requirements, and we would have to take that meal back, because we don't know if you went over the sugar limit or not. So just make sure that you do keep your copies of anything regarding sugar for yogurt. Now, something else that's not creditable is any cheese product. Another cheese product that's very familiar is Velveeta. So if you look here into this yellow box, it says pasteurized prepared cheese product. So anything that's a cheese product is not creditable per USDA. It would have to say, like, I've seen pasteurized processed cheese, and that is cheese. Just a rule of thumb, any cheese that is pre-wrapped, each slice is wrapped, is usually not creditable. But a lot of times they'll buy the big block of sliced cheese that's not individually wrapped, and that is. So again, if it says cheese product, again, you really won't see a cheese food. I've only found it once, and it happened to be a dip. Those products are not creditable to serve. They cannot be claimed. It can be an extra, but it can't be claimed as a meat alternate. And again, I know you may not be buying the food, you may be buying the food, but I just want to bring some of this to your attention of what you can and cannot serve. So grains and infant cereals. Iron fortified infant cereals are often the first solids. It's very easy to digest, and it's least likely to cause an allergic reaction. So there's a reason why that they do it. It must be made of whole grain or enriched, which they usually are. And please make sure, because we're going to talk about something later on about combination, but as far as I know right now, unless I see something differently, if it is infant formula, infant cereal, it can't be like oatmeal and bananas. It has to be like oatmeal only, but you can add banana to it. But I'm going to talk about something later on that just came down from USDA again about a month or so ago, that it may be creditable, but what you'll have to look for to see if you can purchase that and use it. But usually if it's like apples and rice, it just needs to be the rice cereal, but you can add, like, say, applesauce to it on your own, because without a CN label, we don't know how much is the cereal and we don't know how much is the apple in it. So again, at snack only, you can do bread, crackers, and ready-to-eat breakfast cereals. It can have no more. So there's also a sugar requirement for cereals. There can be no more than 6 grams of sugar per dry ounce. It must be whole grain or enriched, and you cannot do any grain-based desserts. The most common, the easiest thing to do is with the WIC-approved cereals, is a lot of people just use this link or go to Google and type in Oklahoma WIC-approved cereals, and it's going to pull up a list for you that does meet the requirements. As you can see here, this is the list. You'll see on here like Cheerios, multi-grain Cheerios, Kix. They're some of the most popular ones, but what you will not see on here is Honey Nut Cheerios. Those go over the sugar requirements. They may have changed the formulation. I haven't been I've been out of the field for 2 years, so I haven't been keeping up. But I do think, as far as I know, the Honey Nut Cheerios has not lowered the sugar in order to meet the requirements to be able to be fed to infants or any child at the daycare. But this is, a lot of my centers do this. This is the easiest thing for them to do. As long as as long as you're purchasing what's on this list, it will meet requirements. But please, you do also have to have a copy of the label, because we have to see that what you're buying. So you can say, well, I bought Cheerios. Well, we need to see the label as well. Even though it's on this, we need to see the label. We said no grain-based desserts. So what do we mean with no grain-based desserts? And again, this is not just for infants. This is for anybody at the center. We talk about like cereal bars, Nutri-Grain bars, Pop-Tarts, cinnamon rolls, granola bars, donuts, cookies, etc. So these items cannot be served or claimed. And it's more if the baby food, desserts, baby food, those cannot be claimed as well. Those have never been able to be claimed. So if a parent or someone's bringing dessert baby food, well, put it this way, if a parent brings dessert baby food, you can give it to them. You just can't use it as part of the reimbursable meal. It can be like an extra after you fed them all the requirements per USDA. It would just be considered an extra. So this is something new. Again, this just came down, September. I think we found out about it in October. So very new, but it's combination foods for infants. Here's how it goes. So if there's at least one credible component the combination food may be offered. And we're talking combination baby food jarred. If the package does not list the volume or percentage of each creditable ingredient, then you will need more information from the manufacturer. If a percentage is listed, you may need to calculate the amount of each ingredient to determine the number of tablespoons or teaspoons. So what I was talking to you about earlier with the rice, or like the infant cereal with the fruit, if it's mixed in together, pre-packaged that way, we don't know how much fruit, we don't know how much cereal. If the package tells you, then you can serve it. It's just when you do it yourself, we know how much is cereal and how much is fruit. So, but we do know with the jarred baby foods that they did change it to where you can have combination food items such as, say, sweet potatoes and chicken, and it will tell you how much is in there, so you can serve it to the infants. But you will have to keep a copy of the documentation or of the information, kind of like the CN label. So what is a credible food item? And you can see Appendix F in the infant food list in the Feeding Infants in the CACP program. Now, when you got a copy of the handouts, it had the infant meal patterns in it, and it also had a link to this Feeding Infants guide. It's too large for us to put into our system. It's because USC makes it very beautiful and very colorful. And so it's just too large of a file for us to upload, but I sent you the link. You can, if you can't click on it and it just pops up, just copy the link and put it in your internet browser and it will pull this up. So if it's a credible food item, it'll be on Appendix F. These are non-accreditable food items are barley, cooked grains, dried or powdered cheese, freeze-dried vegetables, granola, macaroni or any other pasta, millet, and mixed grains. So I also, in the handout with the infant meal patterns, I gave you how to get to this infant feeding guide. But we also gave you the copy of it's 6 pages. We have it in English and in Spanish. I just sent you the English one, but it's going over all this documentation. It's pretty good. It's really easy to read. It gives a lot of good information about this combination food. If you need the Spanish version, it is in our resource library. You can go locate it under the meal patterns. You'll see it there. That is where that is located. And this is one of our coworkers took this for me. She went to Walmart and this is what she found. So with Gerber, she found this says it does have it in cups. It has to say cups, tablespoons, teaspoons. And this does say 1/8 of a cup of sweet potato, 1.5 teaspoons of turkey, and 2.5 tablespoons of cooked grain. Now we just saw back here that it says, it does say mixed grains. I'm not for sure if grains are creditable because this says mixed grains, but if you looked at the other slide, it says if at least one creditable component, the combination food must be offered. So you can do it even if one doesn't meet. You can just count the sweet potato and say the turkey if the grains don't meet. The other one is we have cup vegetable, which I think it said again, the 1/8 of a cup. It had 1.5 teaspoons of chicken and 2 tablespoons of cooked pasta and rice. And as you could tell from the creditable components in here, it says pastas. So the pasta would not be eligible, but you can count the other 2 ingredients, the vegetables and the chicken. So this is, like I said, very, very new. We just got it. The date on it says September 20th. We talked about it in November at our staff meeting. So this is very, very, very new. If you're like, I never heard this before, it's just because they literally just came out with it. So now let's talk about some record keeping. We are just flying through this. You guys are pretty quiet with the questions. This is for, again, the whole center, but if anybody donates any food or formula, it cannot be served as part of the reimbursable meal. And I'm going to kind of go into more detail about this. If a parent, say like their child's getting older and they have a bunch of WIC items like WIC formula or WIC food, and they want to donate to the center, that is not permissible. It actually never has been permissible. And the reason being is because you can't donate a federal program to another federal program. They cannot donate those items to the center. A parent can bring, so when we mean about donated products, a parent can bring a component for the child. That's okay. But when we talk about donated products, a lot of times the donated products are for the entire center. Like if you're donating your formula, it's because you have 10 cans of formula and you're just donating it to any kid that wants it. You can bring a component for your child, but you cannot bring donated products where you're donating it to the center or donating it to all infants. That's kind of the difference between the two. Okay, we talked about medical statements, but just again, it's required for any participants who are unable to consume certain foods that are required or not allowed for infants by USDA. So for instance, we talked about juice. Maybe the child is having constipation issues and the parent's like, I need you to give my kid juice. Well, you will need a doctor's note because that is not allowable on USDA program. It must be signed by a recognized medical authority. It should include the alternate food, but a lot of times it does not. But, you know, in instance of the juice, it's going to tell you that they want you to serve it. And again, you cannot claim a meal lacking a required component or quantity unless the meal is supported by a medical statement. So, and again, we understand, like when we were talking about the 8 months old not eating, we are supposed to, per the question answers in our manual, we are supposed to be asking questions. Why is this child not eating? And it could be, again, because the parent's like, no, I don't want my child to have solid food until 1 year of age. That has happened. I've also been to centers before where, of course, the child may have been extreme premature or a premature child, and they're not where they need to be developmentally to have solid food. So we understand these circumstances. But again, it's just going to protect you if you also have a medical statement, because once that child turns 1, they still may be not where they need to be to where you can claim them as a 1-year-old. I mean, you'll claim them as a 1-year-old, but they just may not be where they need to be. So as long as you have that medical statement, it will help and protect you so you can provide the meals and still claim the meals. So it is very, very important that all forms must be maintained daily by month at each site for any institution participating in the program. Receipts need to be kept to show food items purchased by the center for infants. You may choose to, I've had people do this, that they may use, say you're doing peaches for lunch for your kids, and you're using the peaches and you're pureeing it yourself. That's fine, but just kind of let us know what you're doing, because we do look at receipts. We do look to see what's being purchased. So if you're telling us you're purchasing baby food and we look at the receipts and we're not seeing any baby food, just let us know what your processes are. Now, this is a copy of our infant meals as served form. And again, if you are keeping a different form at your center that gives us at least this information, if not more, you are more than welcome to do that. You do not have to keep multiple sets of records. So say you have a form that, again, it says Harrison Butler ate at 10:05 and had 4 ounces of milk or formula, and finished eating at 10:25. Like, if you have detailed records, you are more than welcome to use those records. What we do need to have is we do have to have the child's name. We do need to have the age. And again, we need specifics of what you gave them. What you might see here is if you look at breakfast under his formula, it has formula with an asterisk by it. With this form, it's kind of cut off at the bottom. You can have your own process as long as you tell us what it is. But this, with the asterisk on the formula, it's just telling us that the parent provided the formula. So you may need just to let us know if a parent provides something. We need to kind of know how you do that. Now, I've seen this form done in 2 different ways. If you do want to use this form, I've seen it like this, where it has Harrison Butler for breakfast, for lunch, and for snack. And this will list all the kids for per day. I've also seen this done as where it says, like, say, total infants served at the very top above that. They've listed, say, Harrison Butler and put 9 months, and they will use this for the week. So it will just be like, they'll put the date, like today is Monday, December 7th. They'll put like December 7th in the breakfast, and then they'll put what he had. So you can do it one of 2 ways. You can have it to where it's per center, and you're doing it every day and they'll list all the kids. But I've also seen it where they do one of these sheets per child for the week, because we do list 5 days. So it's really whatever you choose to do. But again, you need to make sure it has the child's name. And please, on all forms, put first, last names, because We don't know who the kids are. We don't know how old they are. You may have two Harrisons at your center. If you just put Harrison, you may have an infant Harrison, and then you may have a Harrison that's 5. And when we're looking at records, we get very confused because we don't know that you have 2. Just remember, when you're doing everything, you're doing it as people who all we have in our hands is the information that you're giving us. We don't work there, so we don't know who they are. So again, please just be as detailed as possible. Do you have any questions regarding the infant meals to serve form? Again, you can use anything that is as detailed or more detailed. Do not feel you have to keep our record and another one. If you have one record that has this much detail or more, you are more than welcome to keep just the one information. You may have an even start, so you're having to keep a lot of paperwork for the Head Start program. Don't feel you have to keep our paperwork as well. You can just use the one paperwork, and then we can use that for the client or for the review process. So just a reminder that if you do serve any of these items to your infants, there does need to be labels someplace, breakfast cereal, yogurt, labels on combination baby foods. So if you are serving these, you have to have labels. If you don't have labels, then we can take back meals because we don't know if it's in the sugar requirements or if the combination food item met the guidelines per USDA. So I just want to give you kind of a quick overview of when we come out to do a review, what are maybe some things that could cause us to take meals back? And again, this is not all inclusive. This is just some of the things. If you serve juice, if you serve a grain-based dessert, which are the cookies, the pastries, the sweet stuff, there are some things you can do. We have what's called the Grange chart. If it's in red in the Grange chart, you cannot serve it. If it's black, you can in writing. So for instance, you can do like French toast, pancakes, waffles, but you cannot do cinnamon rolls or Pop-Tarts or anything like that. If you're serving an item that's not permissible on CACFP, if it's insufficient quantities or quantities are not listed. So I know the insufficient quantities, that would be more like on the formula side if you're not serving enough formula. But if you forget to the child's 8 months old and they have a meal every day, but you don't list anything at snack and you claim the snack, then we will take those meals back. If you don't have any records at all, or if your records or documents do not support the claim. And we have seen it before, just a reminder of whoever does the claim. It happens quite a bit. If you have to revise a claim, it's usually because the infants are in the meal count worksheet. When whoever takes all of your information and they tabulate it into a meal count worksheet, infants are in a different area. So a lot of times they are accidentally left off the claim. So we understand that sometimes it's just a revision of the claim. I appreciate you guys being here today. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to put some music on for just a moment. The institution originals are on page 231. If you have any questions, again, I will be here for about 2 to 3 minutes. Please put it in the chat. You can also contact us at any of those ways on the slides. Again, these slides are going to stay up indefinitely. So if you ever want to go, if you didn't get a copy of them now, you can always go back out there. We have them 3 per page and we have them 1 slide per page. I'm going to put some music back on. Feel free to ask any questions. I appreciate you guys being here today. I hope we were able to answer any questions, or I hope you feel you got some information out of this training. You guys have a very, very Merry Christmas and a very blessed New Year. And we will talk to you guys soon.